So today we are gonna all cook together and make a stir fry. And so feel free to, take off your cameras, because then it's easier for me just to see, how you guys are doing, if if I need to kind of slow down or speed up or whatever. So I'm trusting and hoping that you guys have some equipment and your ingredients kind of lined up. And we're gonna go through some knife skills, and then we'll talk about just kind of how to prep things to do a stir fry. We'll talk a little bit about substitutions and seasonality, because you can really do a stir fry any time of the year. And then of course we've got all the yummy flavorings that go into it, like the sauce that will make it really yummy. So, okay, I think we will just go ahead and get started. So again, Noah is kind of handling the chat. So if you guys have questions, if I'm going too fast, please let him know. He'll then tell me to slow down or wait. But I will also take some breaks as we go, just to kind of check in with all of you and see if there's questions or concerns. So first of all, I just want to introduce, the setup here. So this is my cutting board, and then underneath your boards, I use a little piece of shelf liner, but if you guys want to put some damp paper towel underneath, that's going to help to keep your board from sliding around as you're working on it. See, I'm like trying to push it around and it's not going to go anywhere. So feel free to grab some paper towels and put that underneath your cutting board. You can also use just a damp kitchen towel. That works just as well too. And then I'm going to use this burner here. This is an induction burner. My other burners are over there on the stove. So you'll see most of the action right here. I didn't want to have to try and go back and forth and change camera angles and all that good stuff. So that's how we're going to do it. And hopefully everything will just kind of take place right here. I also have a little compost bucket. I don't know if you guys have from your waste management company, something like this. So the goal is to try and keep food scraps out of the landfill. And there's kind of a new law coming out, SB 1383. And so there should be some little buckets getting distributed to people to take care of your food scraps. So, all right. I am going to go ahead and start some rice today, just to kind of show you the basics of how to put together some, basic steamed rice. And then we'll move into our stir fry. So if you want to make rice with me, you're welcome to. If you already have some made, that's great too. If you want to do it later, tomorrow, whenever, that's awesome as well. All right, so I'm using like a jasmine. Actually, it's a basmati rice, but both jasmine and basmati use a similar ratio of rice to water, which is 1 to 1.5. So I've got 1.5 cups of rice here, and then 1.5 times 1.5 is 2 1/4. So I'm going to put 2 1/4 cups of liquid in with my rice. But first, just because this came in a big bulk bag, I'm going to rinse my rice. You don't always have to rinse it, but for this one, I typically do. So I'm just going to get this kind of rinsed off a little bit. There could be some dust and stuff on there, just because it came in like a big giant bag. But if your family regularly makes rice and you don't rinse it, then that's cool too. Also, if you have a rice cooker, hey, use it. We're all about, how to do things quickly, easily, efficiently. Okay. So I'm going to start the rice in here. Here's my 1.5 cups of rice, and you can use water, you can use broth. I actually found some chicken broth that was left in my fridge from something last week, so I'm going to use that up. Just so I don't waste it. So I'm going to see what's left in here. And I know I'm going to need a little bit also for the stir fry. So I'm going to pull out what I need for the sauce, which is just a couple tablespoons. And then I'm going to measure out the rest of it here in this thing. So I needed 2 1/4 cups. Ooh, that's almost exactly what I need, but not quite. So let me grab a little water for this thing. All right. So while I'm getting this going, I would love to know where you guys are joining us from. So if you have a second to put in the chat, just where you're, coming from. Are you here in Solano County? Are you in one of the cities? Are you from out of state? We don't know really who's here with us today, other than the students that we're currently teaching. So, all right. So for rice, we put the rice and the liquid together in the little pot. and then it goes on the stove. And for rice, I'm going to cover it right now, but you don't necessarily have to cover it at the beginning. But it's important to cover it once it comes to a boil. So I'm gonna crank this up because I want it to come to a boil. So I'll just kind of put it cracked a little bit so I can see what's going on in there. I have a tendency to let rice boil over. So that can happen if your lid's on and it starts to boil a lot, then all of a sudden you've got rice liquid all over the place. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll move, once this comes to a boil, I'll transfer it over to my other stove over there and just let it cook over there. So, and then for jasmine basmati, it generally takes about 15 minutes to cook your rice. You know, when you lift the lid after 15 minutes, you shouldn't see any more liquid sitting in there. And what you might see are these little holes. They're called steam holes. So it almost looks like somebody went through with like a really thick skewer and kind of poked little holes all over in the rice. And that's when you know that it's basically done. And then you can just let it sit for a little bit and let it continue steaming, and then you're good to go. So, all right. So that'll take a few minutes. If you guys have not already washed your produce, this would probably be a good time to do that as well. I have my items over here washed, and I'm gonna kind of show you a few different varieties of some ingredients that you can use. So for our starting part, and I'm gonna see, Noah, were you able to share the recipe just so people can kind of see it? Maybe before we get going.
Yes, I was able to send it out. I'll just send it out once more and make sure everyone has it.
Okay, perfect. So if you don't have it in front of you, that's okay. As long as you have your ingredients, I'll be talking about quantities and telling you what spoons and things to grab. So you don't have to try to multitask too much. Okay, so the first step in our stir fry, for those of you that wanted to do meat or a tofu, we're just going to put the meat or the seafood or the tofu or whatever it is you have in a little bit of a quick marinade just to give it some flavor. So I'm using some tofu. So I just have a block of tofu here from the store. And we're going to put that in a mixture of soy sauce and sherry. So the soy sauce could be a traditional soy sauce, or if you have something called tamari, which is what I have here, you guys can see that. This is just another kind of soy sauce. Some people say it's a little higher quality. You know, they do a little bit, you know, quick fermentation of the soybeans and then, you know, put it in here. So this is, it's basically very, very similar to soy sauce. And you can find low sodium tamari, you can find regular tamari. And if you have regular soy, that's great too. The sherry, if you have something like a cooking sherry that looks like this, you can use that, or you can substitute the sherry with like a rice wine vinegar. So I actually had a couple of these that have like a tablespoon left, so I'm probably going to use this up. You could also use like an apple cider vinegar. That would work fine too. So if you're working with your meat or your tofu, we're going to cut it up into whatever size you want. And keep in mind, this is a stir fry, so everything needs to be kind of smaller pieces. You know, we're going to be using a fork to eat this at the end. So I'm just going to cut my tofu into some blocks, like some little squares, like cubes, basically. And get that ready to go. And we'll talk about knife skills in a minute, but the tofu is, at least for me, for those of you that are doing a chicken or something, feel free to go ahead and cut that up right now. I did take my tofu out of the wrapper a little bit ago, just to kind of let some of the extra water drain off. And if anybody has one of these, they're super great to use for scooping. This is a bench scraper, or sometimes it's called a pastry scraper. So that is, you'll see me use it a lot. It's one of my favorite kitchen tools. Okay. All right, so I've got my tofu in this bowl, and in another little bowl here, I'm just going to put in my soy sauce and the sherry, or sorry, I'm going to use the rice vinegar. That's right. So we just need a tablespoon of each, and it's just to help give it a little flavor. It's going to sit and marinate for a while we're doing the other tasks. So I'm going to mix these two liquids together in a separate bowl just to mix them up, and then I'm going to kind of pour it over the tofu. But if you've already put it on and just want to mix it all in one bowl, that's fine too. I'm going to use the vinegar just to get rid of this big bottle that's in my pantry. Oh, look, that has like a few drops. I don't even know why I kept that. Okay. Hold on. Let's go to the next one. Let's see how much is in here. Hopefully more than the other one. We're about there. Okay, well, maybe I will need to fill in with a little something else. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there. I'm just gonna do a little splash of this sherry. Okay. Okay, now I'm just gonna get rid of these big bottles so they're out of the way. Get them into my recycling. Okay, so I have my liquid here, the soy sauce and the vinegar / sherry concoction. I'm just going to drizzle that over my tofu. If you're using like shrimp or chicken or whatever, you can just put all that together. And then we want to give that a little stir. I'm going to put together just a little spatula thingy here. Tofu is one of those ingredients that kind of soaks up a lot of the flavors from other things. So it's kind of a good vehicle to hold all the flavors from the tamari and the rice vinegar that I was using. Okay. All right, and if you're using a raw meat or fish or shrimp or something, feel free to put that in the fridge, although it won't be sitting out too long. But I'm just going to set my tofu over here just to get it out of the way. All right. Oh yeah, this was from my. All right. Okay. All good? Everybody good? Everybody got their meat ready for the next step? Thumbs up? Yep. Okay. All right. So let's talk about how to hold the chef knife. So for those of you in the program that we're doing right now, this will be a little bit of a review. Ooh, hold on. My rice is boiling. Awesome. So if you guys see, there's a lot of steam coming out of there. Lots of bubbles. So I'm going to now turn this down to low. I'm going to move it to my other stove over here. I'm going to put it on the lowest possible setting. And we want to keep it covered. Sometimes my stove makes weird clicking noises. We want to keep it covered, lid on and down low, kind of as far as it'll go. And then we're just going to let it sit for about 15 minutes. So I think I better set a timer just so I don't forget. I can get talking about things and then lose track of time. Okay. All right, back to our knife skills bit. So this is a basic chef knife. I think it's like an 8-inch chef knife. And then, so there's 3 parts. You've got the handle, which is right here. Then you have this piece in the middle, which is called the bolster. And then of course you have the blade. So I'm going to put my thumb and my first finger on the blade right in front of the bolster. You guys can see that. And then my other 3 fingers go around the handle. And then when I'm cutting, I'm going to turn sideways so you guys can see me. When I'm cutting, I actually slide the knife forward, and then I pick it up and I drag the tip back. So you're actually cutting away from you. Okay, it's very, very common for people to kind of cut towards us, but it's more efficient to cut away. So you drag it away, drag the tip back, cut away, drag the tip back, so that you're kind of moving if you watch my wrist, it's kind of going around in like a circle. So this takes a lot of practice. This is not something you're going to get today or even this week. But if you just remember, slice forward, drag the tip back, slice forward, then you can kind of practice that motion. The tip of this knife is curved, so it'll help you to kind of do that rocking motion with the knife, and you'll get better as you practice. So my left hand, because I'm right-handed, so I'm holding the knife with my right hand. My other hand is going to kind of have my fingertips curled under like this, and it's gonna kind of guide the food. So let's grab something to cut up for our sauce. Let's pull out a green onion or a scallion, and I'll be able to kind of show you more easily how your other hand kind of walks along the produce. So we want to trim the root off. Okay, we'll put the root in our compost bucket. And then, I don't know if you guys can kind of see, I'll try to move up a little bit further here, just so my board, if you guys can see a little bit closer. I don't know if this is going to help or not, but let's try it. So my hand is here curved, and as I'm cutting, my knuckles might be touching the blade, but my fingertips are curled under, and that way I am not cutting off my fingertips. Okay, and you just kind of walk along your food product, whether it's a piece of celery or a carrot or whatever, and it's almost like a little crab walking on the beach, but you're going to go backwards with your little claw here. Okay, so that's kind of how it's done. We need 3 scallions, the white part minced up, okay, and we can maybe save the greens as a garnish. So I'll just cut off the green part here. I'm going to get the board back in front of me because this is a little weird for me to be leaning over. So let me pull this back. Okay. So the 3 scallions, white part minced, and this is going to go into our sauce. So right now we're going to put together our sauce that has a lot of flavor, which is going to go in kind of toward the end after we saute our vegetables. Okay. So if you guys want to find a bowl, you're going to need a bowl to put all your sauce ingredients into. Doesn't have to be a big bowl. I'm just going to use like this little clear bowl, probably whatever this is, 3 cups or so, to hold the sauce. So I'm kind of going backwards a little bit through my ingredient list, but that's okay. I wanted to show you the knife part first. Okay, so there was 1 scallion, and we're just going to do, we're just doing the white and light green parts now, and then we'll cut up the darker green parts a little bit later on to garnish our stir fry, kind of toward the end. Okay, so again, we want to cut off the roots, put those somewhere else, and then we'll go through and cut our scallions up into just little pieces. I'm just doing little slices for right now. I'm going to show you a slightly different way to hold the knife once we move on to our garlic. Okay. Actually, I could do it now too. So if you wanted this to be more finely chopped, you can change your position of your hand. So now all my fingers are around the handle, and my palm is going to go on the top of the blade where it's obviously not sharp. And then you just rock it back and forth like this. So it's kind of like you have a little fulcrum type of a thing here. And this enables you to kind of chop through your things. I'm kind of moving the knife back and forth across my scallions. And just be careful when you're trying to get your bits off of your knife. Okay. So those go into the bowl. I'm gonna grab a little drink of water. Okay, I think I did all the scallions. All right, so let's move on to some garlic. We need about a tablespoon of minced garlic cloves. So this is my head of garlic. This is not the clove, this is the head. The head is made up of many little cloves. So I'm gonna just kind of pull off with my thumb. I just kind of push them down, and that'll break off the little cloves. And so for a tablespoon, I'm going to say we're going to need about 4, probably, depending on the size. These are a little bit small, so I might do 5. So 5 of our little garlic cloves should get us about to a tablespoon. So now we need to get this little papery skin off of our clove. So you can do this a couple different ways. If you feel comfortable with your knife, you can put your knife blade right here on top of your clove and then give it a little whack like that. Or if you're using a scraper, that might feel a little safer. You can do it that way. Or you can take something like a measuring cup right? It's a little not so dangerous, hopefully. And then just give that a little whack. And so all we're doing is we're just kind of lightly crushing our garlic. And then if we cut off the root end, which is what was attaching it to the bottom part, then the little paper will just kind of fall right off. Okay. So it's much easier than trying to kind of pick it all off with your fingers like this. So again, I'm just going to kind of go through here. I'll use the measuring spoon or measuring cup option. So give it a little whack and then cut off the root, and then you just pull off the paper. So I'm just going to check in with you guys. Are we doing okay in terms of speed? Does everybody need a little more time? How are we doing? Thumbs up? Do we need to pause? No, you might have to tell me. I just see a little strip at the top, and I'm not sure if I really can see thumbs up or thumbs down or anything really. Thumbs, I think I see a thumbs up maybe. Or maybe you're doing something else. I don't know. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm on my last clove of garlic. That one has some funny spots. Let me just shave it off a little bit there. All right. The other ones are good. Okay, so we're gonna handle the garlic first, holding our knife like this, and I'm just gonna kind of bunch it into a pile and then just kind of break it down a little bit. And once I get it into some chunks, then I'm gonna change to that other position of my hand and we're gonna do this. And I think I saw somebody over on the screen there chopping like this. So we just want to have it minced. Minced means pretty small. It's going to be like, you know, a couple millimeters or so. Well, maybe not. Maybe like 1/8 of an inch or something. You can make it as big or as small as you want, but typically minced is pretty tiny. So, but it shouldn't take you too long. We're just going to keep going. And once you're done with your garlic, this is going to go into your bowl with the green onions because it's part of our sauce. So the stir fries, it's a lot of kind of prep at the beginning, but then the cooking process goes relatively fast. So this process that we're doing right now, getting everything set up into little bowls, is called mise en place. And it means to put into place. That way we're not scrambling, trying to cut something and cook something, and something could be burning over there, and we're still trying to chop. So, all right. Okay, next let's do the ginger. We need about 2 tablespoons of ginger. So here's my ginger root, one of these knobby things. And the best way to peel this is using a spoon. So for those of you that were in the class yesterday, you might remember how we did this. I think we used ginger yesterday. Yeah. So we're gonna just scrape off the skin with a spoon. And the reason we do it this way is if we used a peeler, it would take off too much of the actual part that we use. And so the skin of the ginger is really thin. So we just need to do a little scrape off of the ginger skin. And then I'm going to talk about a couple different options for how you can actually get the ginger cut up. If you have something called a microplane, it's like a little fine grater, you could just use that. Or we could just cut it up. So I've got a couple spots here I need to cut off my ginger. There, it looks a little better. Okay. I have a little more scraping to do here. No, I'm just going to check in with you. Is there anything else in the chat any questions or anything? Hopefully you can hear me wherever you are out there. Oop. Noah, are you there? Hopefully I didn't lose you. I don't know where Noah is. That's okay. We'll keep going. Okay, I'm grabbing my grater thing. So I have something that looks like this. They also come long and they're kind of skinny and longer than this. But so this is one way you can do it where you just grate it. So I put this down and I just rub the ginger on top of it. And then you just tap this to get all the little ginger bits off. So that's an option. Or you could just cut it up kind of like we did with the garlic. So I'm just going to do some little rounds, cut it across to get it started. And we're looking for about 2 tablespoons. So that's a little bit more than the garlic. And then we're just going to go across, break it down into chunks like I did with the garlic. Okay. And then I'm going to change and do a little chop, chop, chop like this. So what you might notice is that there's some little, they almost look like little hairs sticking out of the ginger. That's totally normal. That's just part of the ginger. When you grate it, those tend to get removed because you're really just getting kind of the pulp that's in here. When you mince it, you still have some of those little fibers, but either way is okay. This is all good, and it's going to go into our stir fry. Okay. If we want to measure it, we can. You just take my little tables. The tablespoon is the bigger one in your measuring spoon collection. So I'm just going to kind of check it out. There's one of those. And roughly another one. The rest of it is on my board. Okay. All right, everybody doing good? You should have a little bowl that looks like this now that has the scallions and the garlic and the ginger in it. Okay. Now it's kind of the easy part of the sauce. All right, thumbs up. Thank you. I see that. So now we're just going to add some liquids. So we need 3 tablespoons of our soy sauce or the tamari. So I am going to have these handy little like baby liquid measuring cup things with tablespoons marked on the inside. So I'm going to do that, or you can use your measuring spoon too, either way. So 3 tablespoons soy sauce. Oh, you know what? There's something else I wanted to show you guys, another product which I'm going to need to use because I'm running low on soy sauce. This is called coconut aminos. So this is basically like the liquid that comes out of the coconut tree. It's like the sap, and then they kind of like water it down a little bit and add some salt. Okay, that is for my timer just went off for the rice. So I'm going to check that really quick, and then we'll come back to our sauce. Perfect. All right, my rice is done. I did see little steam holes on the top. And I turned off the heat, and then I just put the lid back on, and it's just going to sit there and stay warm, and it might steam a little bit more too, which is fine. Okay, back to coconut aminos. So if anybody has like an allergy to soy or does not want to be eating soy, this is a really great alternative. It's kind of like a soy sauce substitute. And so it has some sodium in it, so it'll give you that saltiness. But actually, I think it's not even as salty as, yeah. So just to give you a little comparison, the tamari in 1 tablespoon has 990 milligrams of sodium, and the coconut aminos in 1 tablespoon only has 270. So that's pretty dramatic. So if you're trying to cut back on salt or sodium too, this is another good alternative. So I'm going to use some of these along with the bit of tamari that I had. So 3 tablespoons of our soy sauce, tamari, coconut aminos, and that'll just go into the bowl with the ginger, garlic, scallion mixture. Okay. And then we have a little bit of our sherry again, so a tablespoon of that. You could also use the vinegar that we were discussing earlier. Okay, so tablespoon of that. So 1 tablespoon of the sherry or your vinegars, 3 tablespoons of the soy sauce product, whatever you're using. Okay. And next, you're going to add just a tiny bit of sugar. So a half of a teaspoon. So if you want to find your measuring spoons, this is the thing that says like 1/2. So it's the half a teaspoon of sugar. We're just going to add that into our sauce. It's not a lot, but it's going to help just give it a little more complexity on flavor. So it's not just all salt, salt, salt. All right, soy sauce, so you should have 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. What was that? Here, read it to you. Half a teaspoon sugar, 1 tablespoon of the sherry or the vinegar. We have our 2 tablespoons of ginger, 1 tablespoon of garlic minced up, the 3 scallions that we put in. Scallions are green onions. And then last but not least, we're going to put in a couple tablespoons of chicken broth, or stock, or whatever it is you have. If you're doing a beef stir fry, you could use beef broth. You could also just use a veggie broth. And if you don't have any of those, you could just throw in a little bit of water too. That's fine. Okay. All right. So here's the sauce. And this is just going to sit aside. Let's kind of see what it looks like. I'm going to try to use these clear bowls so I can show you things. All right. So I'm going to put this over next to my tofu over here, just to get that out of the way as well. All right. Now we get to cut up some more vegetables. So, everybody good with the sauce? Any questions? I'm going to pause here for just a second. If anybody has questions, thumbs up. Okay, great. If you do have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. I think you guys should be able to unmute. Or you can put it in the chat and Noah will relay it to me as well. So, okay. All right. Moving on. So with the stir fry, we have some vegetables that are going to be kind of hard and need longer cooking times, and others that are going to need half of the amount of cooking time. So we're going to tackle the harder vegetables first that need longer cooking time. So that includes our carrots and some broccoli and an onion. The onion doesn't necessarily need maybe as long. Well, it kind of does. It needs to kind of like get the aromatics into the oil and really build flavor into our stir fry too. So let's start with the onion. The recipe calls for half of an onion. I just found a little kind of baby onion that I'm going to use. So here we go, a little knife skill thing again. So on the onion, you've got the top up here, and then there's the root, which usually has some dirt in it. So I'm going to cut off the top of the onion. And I'm just going to shave a little bit of the root, but I still have some of that root material in there that's going to hold these layers together. Okay, so let's put that aside. Then I'm going to cut this in half, top to bottom. And the peeling is still on, but not for long. So now I have a little corner up here that I can grab and take the peeling off. Okay, so now I should have the onion cut in half and peeled. Well, that's the goal. I'm still peeling. This one's kind of, sometimes the onion skin like grabs on and doesn't want to let go. Got one of those today. Okay, there we go. I need to rinse that. Okay. Hopefully your onions are not too strong and make you cry. They make me cry all the time. All right, so now you can cut this whatever size you want. I know sometimes in stir fries, there's like big kind of chunks of onions. If you want to just do slices, that's cool. If you have a really big half of an onion and you want to kind of do slices, but it's like unmanageable, then what you could do is make a cut that goes from the root end down to the other part, but I didn't go all the way through. I'm going to hold it up here so you can see. See, I didn't go all the way through the root. It's still being held together. So we can do it that way and then just go across in little slices. So I'm gonna make a like 1/4 inch thick slices on my onion here. And I'm gonna do both halves because my onion was pretty small. Woo! Here comes the gases from the onion. Okay, let's put that over there in a bowl. All right, the next thing we're gonna cut, which can go into the same bowl as the onion, because they're gonna go into the pan at the same time, are the carrots. So you guys should have 2 carrots. I have 3 that are kind of shorter, so I'm gonna use these 3. One also has kind of a spot that I need to cut off. Woo! I need to rinse this cutting board. Holy mackerel, the onions are strong. Okay. Shallots are even worse for me. I don't know what it is. I always cry when trying to cut. I'm gonna move these things too. Let's get them away from my face. All right, back to our carrots. So if you want to peel them, you can. I just scrubbed mine with a little brush, so I'm not going to bother peeling because it's just, you know, less food waste. So we have something that's kind of long and roly-poly on our cutting board that's not real safe to slice. So I'm going to cut this in half, and then I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise. So I'm going to make a little bridge with my hand like this to stabilize it and then go straight down. Now I have like a flat surface so it won't roll around on my board. Okay, so you're welcome to do that just to get it, you know, so that it's a little easier to manage. So then I actually cut it in half again lengthwise. So I'm kind of quartering my carrot. And then I'm going to go across. And again, I'm in kind of like 1/4 inch size slices. So I'll bring a couple of these over. So this is about the size that I'm cutting. You guys can, you know, if you want to do larger, just keep in mind that the larger the carrot, the longer it's going to take to cook. So the benefits of small things in a stir fry is that you get to eat sooner. So, okay. Oh, I need my onion bowl back just to put this stuff in there. Okay, I'm gonna keep it as far away as possible. All right, so the carrots are gonna go in. I've got a couple pieces here that look weird. I'm gonna pull those out. Okay, so carrots and onions are gonna go together. This carrot has a little bit of a problem in the middle. I don't know. It's a little dry. I'm just gonna shave that out. Okay. All right, so we will just carry on with our carrots here. And you, again, you're going to practice using this kind of motion and then walking your hand across the carrot. All right, I see carrots getting cut out there. That's awesome. So the main thing as you're cutting, it doesn't really matter what shape you're doing, but more importantly is that your pieces are kind of the same size. You want some consistency in size. That way everything will cook evenly. Because if we had some bigger pieces of carrot and some little teeny tiny ones, then the teeny tiny ones would get done and the bigger ones would still be kind of crunchy. So we want to have everything kind of cook at the same rate. Okay, I'm on my last carrot. Actually, I think I'm just going to do half of this. I think we have enough carrots here. Since I had 3. It's kind of a larger one. Okay. I'm just gonna come and see how you guys are, see if I can see anything. Okay, cool. All right, are we done or almost done with the carrots? Shall we move on? Okay, see a couple thumbs up. Cool. All right. Onions, carrots. Okay, broccoli. So I found at the store this little baby broccoli. It's like a broccolette, I think is what it's called. You can also just use a regular head of broccoli, but I'd say, if you have a regular head, you're looking for kind of just a little bunch like this. It's like a half of a normal head of broccoli. So I'm going to use this because I had it on hand. So with this product, you actually do, and with regular broccoli too, you can use the stems. So what some people do on a regular head of broccoli is you can peel a little bit of the stem just to kind of get some of the harder, more fibrous parts off. With this, you don't necessarily have to peel, and I'm not going to peel, but I am going to just trim the ends a little bit. And then I'm going to cut up the stems as well as the tops. So the recipe says to cut your broccoli into florets. So what that means is that you kind of have like, the little tree that the broccoli, looks like. So this is a floret, and it's probably about, 2 or 3 fingers wide. And then if you want to use your stems, you can just cut those down into smaller bits as well. So you want to cut your stems down small, probably smaller than your florets, or at least slice a little thinner, because they will take a little bit longer to cook if they're really big. So I'm gonna just trim up my base of the broccoli, and then I'm just gonna do the stems in like some thin slices. And I got a few leaves on here too. I'm gonna just throw those in as well. The leaves are totally edible on your broccoli if you happen to have some leaves. All right. So, okay, so there's my first one. And this is all going to go into the same bowl with the carrots. Oops, got things stuck in my hand there. What I like to do on the florets is I kind of just make a little cut on the top and then kind of pull it apart, as opposed to just cutting through it, because sometimes that just makes your little floury part kind of get all squished and disappear. I'm just giving mine another little rinse. I have some spots on the inside of my little floury part, so I'm going to kind of inspect a little bit here as I'm going. Okay, done. That's good. Okay, one more. Any questions or concerns so far? Anybody need anything? Okay. All right, so here's our first bowl. We should have our onions, carrots, and the broccoli. And if you have extra broccoli parts, that's fine too, leaves and stems and whatever. Making a little bit of a mess here. I'm going to wipe my board off. Okay. All right, how are we doing? Ready for the next thing? We've got some cabbage that we're going to do next. So yeah, thumbs up there. Okay, good. Okay, this is a head of cabbage. We do not need the whole thing because it's pretty huge. So for this one, I'm just going to cut off a little a little section on like the edge. I think the recipe says 1/4 of a head. You know, I would say 1/4 of a small one. So this is just kind of a small little wedge of your cabbage. And then I'm just gonna put this down flat side down so it's easy to cut. And then I'm gonna go make a couple of cuts across from the top down. Then I'm gonna just try to keep it all together because this is like layers and layers and layers of cabbage leaves, all kind of, you know, packed together. So now I turned it and I'm just gonna cut almost like I'm cutting it into like little cubes. So if I pull out like a little cube of my cabbage, it's like I have a little stack. So here's like a little stack of my cabbage, and then you can see all these little layers in here, and then it'll just kind of fall apart when you mix it. So the cabbage will not take as long to cook. So we need to start a new bowl for our cabbage. So I'm going to put this over here in a different bowl. And just for fun, I'm going to see about how many cups I have here. I kind of meant to do this before. So if I pack my little pieces in here, okay, so that's 1 cup. I'm going to guess this is about 3 cups of chopped cabbage. Oh, maybe 2. Yeah, okay. I'm going to say it's about 3 cups of chopped up cabbage. So I know I had said something about ounces, 4 or 5 ounces of cabbage. You can just kind of eyeball this. And, you know, the thing about a stir fry is that if you are missing one of these ingredients, you can still do it. You know, maybe I'm just going to do a stir fry with only broccoli and cabbage and mushrooms. Maybe I'll do it in the summertime with bell peppers and green beans and onions. So it really, you can just mix and match this super easily, depending on what time of the year it is and what's in season. Okay, so the cabbage is here, and I'm just going to relocate the first bowl. So then with the cabbage, we're going to add some mushrooms. So I have a few shiitake mushrooms here. I don't know what kind of mushrooms you guys ended up with. I know we probably bought some for you. Maybe you have like a cremini, which is a baby portobello. The shiitakes have kind of a tough stem. So I'm going to take my stems out. If you want to save these stems and throw them into like a stock, or even just put them into like, you know, a chicken broth or a veggie broth, it'll add some more nutrients and some more flavor. So I'm going to kind of set my shiitake stems aside, and maybe I'll use those for something else later during the week or weekend. And I've got, these are kind of larger shiitake mushrooms. So I think I have about 7 of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to use, and they have pretty thick stems. So I'm pulling these off. If your shiitakes have kind of, you know, thin stems, sometimes the mushrooms are much smaller, then you may not need to pull the stems off. But these are really thick for some reason. So, okay. All right, so here's my, now I have like these mushroom caps that are the shiitakes. And I'm just gonna slice these. Some of these are really big, so I'm gonna go in half, and then I'm gonna turn it and then just cut it into slices again. So in, you know, they're again about like maybe 1/2 inch or 1/3 of an inch wide. So it's up to you. And then this can go in with the cabbage because it's going to go at the same time. So you can put your mushrooms and cabbage together. And then I would say the mushrooms, you probably want to slice them sort of thin. What will happen when we add the mushrooms is that, I'm running out of room here in my bowl. There will be some water released because mushrooms have a lot of water in them. So you might notice this one once we actually get to sauteing. Okay, I need to put, let's see, hold on. I need a bigger bowl. All right. Cabbage and mushrooms are now going to go in here. That's else. Okay, so everybody should be working on their mushrooms. Or finishing up their mushrooms. I love shiitake, so I probably have extra than what I normally would put in. So. All right. Okay, so that is the end of our second bowl of ingredients, and I'll just let you guys finish that up. So we've got our harder vegetables here, the carrots, the broccoli, and then we have kind of our second tier vegetables that are a little softer or they won't take quite as long to cook, the cabbage and the mushrooms. And then the last thing we'll do is just, you can chop or not. If you have like baby spinach, which is already small, you don't even have to cut that up. You can just grab a handful of that. Kale, a baby kale would work too. I have some bok choy, and I won't need to use all of this, but I had gotten this from a farm in my CSA box. You know what, I'll just pause. Some of you guys are finishing up something. I'm gonna just explain what CSA is in case some of you are not familiar. So a CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And the way it works is that you can get a subscription to a farm. So there's a couple here in Solano County that deliver Eat Well Farm, which can be found at eatwell.com. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, eatwell.com. They deliver to, I think, every city here in Solano County. And you can get a box every week, or you can get it every other week. You can get a larger one called a family box, or you can get a kind of a smaller one called a box for two. So you can check it out on their website, but basically you just set up an account and you're basically like prepaying for your produce. And then whatever is growing will get delivered to some location, and then you can go pick it up. So for me, it gets delivered on Wednesdays, and every Wednesday after whatever 10 a.m. or whatever their delivery time is, I can just go and pick up my vegetables. So I did do a little cost comparison a few years ago. I haven't done it since COVID, so it'd be interesting to do this again. But I did compare the cost of the CSA box, which is all organic, to the grocery store, and the farm was actually a little bit cheaper by a few cents. So I just don't want all of you to think like, oh, that's going to be double or triple the price. Back then it was very comparable. There's another farm called Terra Firma, Terra, and they farm up by Winters. They also, I think, deliver, I think, Vacaville and Benicia, and maybe additional places if we can kind of hook them up with other places. Okay, so I have a bok choy. Maybe you guys have spinach. The bok choy has kind of a white part on it that's going to be a little firmer, so I'm just going to cut that smaller and thinner. And then I will just leave my the tops or the dark green parts a little bit larger. So I'm just going to kind of do larger cuts on the green parts. Okay. And then this is going to go in its own bowl as well, especially if you just have like a spinach or something that's only the tender greens. They only take about a minute to cook. So we want to keep that separate. So that'll go into it. Okay. All right. Now, finally, we get to the cooking parts. Okay, let's just kind of, I'm going to back up and make sure we have everything. So we have our meat or tofu sitting in our little marinade here. We're going to need that first. So if you did a meat thing, go ahead and grab that. And then we have our sauce, which is sitting over there, and we can just let our sauce sit for a minute. And then we have our 3 bowls of different kinds of vegetables. So now we get to cook. All right. You're going to need a really large saute pan or a wok if you guys have a wok in your house. I have a big saute pan, so I'm going to grab that. And I actually want to show you guys a couple different kinds of pans. So this one is non-stick, and I think at this point we're all pretty familiar with a non-stick pan. I might use this one because tofu tends to get kind of stuck, but sometimes sticking is good. So this pan is just more like, a stainless steel and aluminum pan. So things will stick more to this pan, but the thing is when we add a liquid, or sometimes when we add our vegetables that have more water in them, that will cause all those little brown bits to release from the pan. And that is what builds flavor in your sauce and in your dish. So I'll leave it up to you guys which pan you want to use. I'm going to try the, no, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to try the nonstick one today. All right. So everyone should go ahead and get your pans going on your stove. I'm going to hope that this induction burner, hopefully the bottom of it has enough surface area, it'll work for this pan. Okay. So while this is heating up, we're going to look for our oil. Anything neutral is great. I'm going to use an avocado oil today, but if you have a canola oil or a vegetable oil, that's all fine. Sunflower, safflower. If you want to use a peanut oil would be really great too, and that would lend some additional flavor to your stir fry. I probably wouldn't use an olive oil just because olive oil, but if that's what you have, that's fine too. But sometimes the olive oil flavor, you can taste it and it gets mixed in there. So we're going to kind of just try to find, if you do have it, something more neutral. But if not, that's fine too. Okay, and then we're going to need something to stir our stir fry. So I just found my wooden spoon that I use to test the rice. This is a little bit flat on one end, which is good because then I can kind of scrape things up and move it around easily. All right, so, and my pan is starting to get hot. So when you hold your hand above your pan, you should only be able to hold it there for a couple of seconds, about 3 or 4 inches, up before you start to feel that heat. Okay, so we're going to put in the oil into our hot pan. And we need a couple tablespoons. I'm not really going to measure it. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this. It's kind of the fun of this kind of cooking, is that you can just sort of make it up a little bit as you go. All right, we're going to swirl this around. We want that to heat up. So when we heat up our pans, believe it or not, metal has pores, just like our skin has pores. And so when we heat up our pans, it actually opens up the pores of the metal. And then when you add the oil on there, that kind of helps act as a barrier so that your food doesn't stick quite as much. So we want our pan to be hot and then our oil to heat up. And that's going to help with our searing of our first ingredient. So if you're using any kind of raw meat, that's going to go in next. I'm going to put my tofu in there just to kind of heat it up. But if you want to let your tofu sit a little longer, you can always add it at the end. But I kind of like to cook it a little bit first. So I'm going to put that in there. And there is still some liquid in the bottom. That's okay. I'm just going to put the whole thing in here. And hopefully you'll hear some sizzling. Oh, yeah. All right, so your meat will go in for just if you're cooking like something raw, then you need to cook it until it's basically done. So if it's cut up into small pieces, that might only take a couple minutes. Usually stir frying, small bits of meat, if you're really stirring it, it'll be really fast. All right. In the case of my tofu, I'm just going to heat it through, and then it might also brown a little bit, which also adds some flavor. And then once this is done, I'm just going to kind of dump it out back into the bowl it was in. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, good. We should be wrapping this up in about 20 minutes. Perfect. Okay. I'm just gonna let this kind of sit here because then if I just let it sit, it'll kind of brown a little bit. And the more I'm stirring it around, if my pan is not super hot, then it's not gonna brown. I want it to just to crisp up a little bit, at least on one side. Oh, there we go. Now I see something happening. All right, if you had a chicken or a pork or something in little tiny pieces, that is very likely done by now. So my tofu is a little slow here. All right, I'm gonna give it one more minute and then I'll pull that out. I'm gonna grab some tongs. Okay, and if you're still waiting for your meat to cook, what you want to do next is just make sure that all your bowls of vegetables are kind of lined up. And I'm gonna go grab the sauce as well, so that we have that available. All right. I think this is gonna be easier for me to just pull the tofu out with these tongs. And that's fine. I'm gonna leave a little bit of the oil will be left in here and that yummy soy sauce and sherry mixture. So I do see some nice browning here. All right, so I'm gonna move that out. Like splattering all kinds of stuff all over the place here. A little bit, sometimes stir fries are a little messy, but they're yummy. Two more bits here. Okay. Now, after you have your meat or tofu out, just check the quantity of oil that's in your pan. You should still have about at least a tablespoon. So I'm going to add just a little bit more to my pan, and you might need to as well. All right. So now we are ready for the first veggies, which are the carrots and the onions and the broccoli. So in they go, and you should hear a nice strong sizzle when it hits the pan. So for those of you who are using a saute pan, which is like the one I am, the saute has the sloped sides. I'll give you a little bit of history on why it's called saute. So saute in French means to jump. And what you can do is make your food jump in the pan without using a spoon. So this only works with a saute pan. And I'm sure you guys have seen chefs on, like, you know, whatever cooking show doing this. So you can toss it forward and flip it back into the pan. So this only works with the saute pan that has the sloped sides. If you try it with the pan that has a straight side, it's not going to do anything. So a fun way to practice that is to find yourself like a smaller saute pan. And you can put some dried beans in there or a piece of dried toast, so you can kind of practice that flipping motion. So it's just, I think they invented it honestly because no one could find a spoon in a commercial kitchen, and somebody probably needed to stir the stuff in the pan. And so it works just to kind of do that. So anyway, a little fun about sauteing. All right. So your first round of vegetables, what you should be looking for is your onions are gonna get, they're gonna turn color a little bit. They're gonna go from being white to a little bit more translucent. and that means that they're cooking along nicely. Your carrots will start to be a brighter orange, and your broccoli will be a brighter, more intense green. So that's what we want to see. This is not going to get totally soft before we add the next thing, because remember, we still have some cooking time for our next ingredients. So we don't need this to get, super soft yet. But we do want, I think the onions could be your guide. You do want to have your onions looking a little more translucent, and those should be softening up pretty soon here too. All right. I'm gonna give my pan, I bet it's a little slower than you guys. If you're on like an actual stove top, it's probably cooking a little faster than mine. So I'm not gonna worry about it. I might need to just cover my pan at the end and let it cook a little bit more, but that's okay. All right, I'm gonna give that another 30 seconds, and then we will add, next in is our group 2 veggies, which is our mushrooms and our cabbage. Yeah, I can definitely tell that if I were on my gas range over there, this would be a little more done by now, but okay. So how are you guys feeling about your first round of vegetables? Does it feel like it's kind of getting there? It's a little bit soft. Maybe some pieces are starting to brown. That's another good sign that it's making some progress. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put in my next batch of veggies, which is the mushrooms and cabbage. So in we go. All right, and then you want to keep your heat up pretty high, medium high to high, depending on how powerful your stovetop is. Now, this is the time in the stir fry where there will probably start to be some liquid in your pan, because the cabbage has water and those mushrooms have water, like I mentioned. So as those heat up, you're going to have a little bit of moisture on the bottom of your pan, and that's good, because if you have some of those brown bits on the bottom of the pan, this is where that will start to come up. All right. Okay, I'm just going to let this sit here because I feel like my pan is not moving very fast, but I'm gonna cut up the rest of my scallion greens just to use as a garnish while I'm kind of waiting for this thing to do its routine here. So remember, I had these little green tops on my scallions, so I'm going to just cut those up crosswise. You guys can just keep stirring. Sometimes you need to cut the very tips off. And I'm also going to check in with Noah. Noah, are you there? Can you hear me? I don't know. Did Noah disappear? I don't know where he is. Oh, thumbs up. Okay. So Noah, I just want to check in. Are there any questions in the chat?
No, you are all good. There's
We're
no
good.
questions.
Okay. All right. I'm hearing a little intense sizzle over here, so I'm going to give this a stir. If your pan is really large and your burner is a little bit smaller, then you want to make sure to move things around, because the food that's in the middle of the pan directly on top of that heat source is going to cook faster than the stuff on the edge. So just be sure you're moving everything around. Okay. All right, back to the scallions. Okay. So my little scallion greens, those could go into their own bowl. Or you could add them when you add your fresh greens, like your spinach or your bok choy or whatever. But I'm gonna save it till the very end. You don't have to cook them if you don't want. If you don't cook them, they'll have a little more oniony flavor. All right, so now at this point, your cabbage should be starting to wilt. It should be a little softer. Maybe not, falling apart, hopefully not falling apart, but it should definitely be turning a darker green as well. And if you kind of push on it, it should be really flexible. And meanwhile, those harder vegetables like the carrots just are continuing to cook a little bit more. All right. So just for fun, I'm going to pull out a carrot and a little broccoli piece here. And I'm going to grab a fork. And I'm just going to stab it and see how soft it is. So you kind of, you can test things as you go. So my carrots are still a little bit hard, but they're not completely raw. So I'd say they're definitely kind of at that crisp, tender phase, but still a little bit crisp. All right. Oh, now the liquid from the mushrooms is starting to happen. Okay, that's going to help things steam a little bit here too. All right, I need to let this go another couple of minutes and then I will add the bok choy. So I'm going to try to give you guys some other ideas for stir fry ingredients to use at different times of the year. So, excuse me. So I know I mentioned bell peppers and green beans in the summer. Right now we're kind of like fall going into winter, so mushrooms are great. Carrots are happening. The broccoli is in season. The cabbage is starting to come. You could throw in some cauliflower, any of those brassica family type of vegetables. If you try a red cabbage, just be aware that everything will turn a little bit pink, but you can totally use a red cabbage. If you want to be kind of adventurous, you could try something like fennel, which is kind of a harder, kind of a bulb. It has kind of a licoricey flavor. This could also, let me think, what else? You don't want to use potatoes in the stir fry. The potatoes need to be cooked differently, but trying to think of anything else that would work. It's coming to mind for winter. In the spring, you could use asparagus. You could use snap peas and snow peas, and just regular shelling peas that you could kind of throw in. You could use spring onions. If you have leeks, that's just a different kind of an onion type of product. So those long things are like white on the bottom and green on top. You could definitely use the white and light green parts of your leeks in place of your regular yellow onion. All right, I think finally my pan is getting there. It's a little slow. All right, in with my bok choy. And I'm assuming by now you guys have added your spinach or your bok choy, whatever your greens are. This is looking super healthy, which is great. All right. And if you are using something like spinach, that's also going to have some water as it wilts. That'll kind of release some more water and give you some more steam. All right. And then once that part is wilted, then you get all the flavor kind of gets dumped in at the end. So then we kind of go to our sauce. Oh wait, before we do that, we want to put our meat back in there. So sorry, I lied. Don't put your sauce. I mean, you can, it's no big deal if you already put your sauce in, but I'm gonna put my tofu back in here. I want my bok choy to get a little more cooked. There it is. All right, here's my tofu. So once your greens are wilted, then go ahead and put your meat back in. And what you may have also be noticing is that everything should have shrunk down a little bit. So at the beginning, you might have thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit all that stuff into the pan? But hopefully it's all fitting okay. I know mine is, you know, the vegetables will wilt and shrink and it'll be okay. All right. So in with my tofu. And don't forget to put all the liquid from your meat in there too. So if you still have a little bit of the liquid from the cooking process of your meat, that is like gold. You want to keep that. That's going to add more flavor. And then as soon as your meat is kind of heated through a little bit, we're going to pour in all of our sauce ingredients. And then it's done. So you might give your sauce a little stir. I know we had some sugar in there. We didn't really mix it up, but by this point, that sugar should be mostly dissolved. But if it's not, when you add your sauce, just get a little scraper and try to get all of that goodness out of the bowl. All right, I think I'm ready to add my sauce. How you guys doing? Everybody kind of at the tail end, adding your last things. All right, and your heat should still be up pretty high. Everything should be cooking. The vegetables should be in kind of a single layer across the bottom of your pan. If you have too many vegetables in there, they'll kind of steam as opposed to brown. But don't worry, that's fine too. All right, so I'm gonna put my sauce in. All right, and now we want to just stir it all together really quick. And we don't want to cook this too long because we don't want all of the liquid to just evaporate. We still want there to be a little bit of a sauce in our stir fry, but we need to heat it up. We need to get it warm. We don't want to have cold sauce on our warm vegetables. So as soon as you see a little bit of bubbling with the sauce, then you're probably good. We also want to cook a little bit the ginger and the garlic that we put in there. We cut it up pretty small though, so tiny things like that doesn't take more than a minute to cook. So just keep stirring it around, and after about 1 minute, you should be completely done. And you'll probably start to smell the ginger and the garlic. Once it hits the heat of your pan, it'll start to be very aromatic. Right. Okay, that is that. So, and then don't forget, if you have your scallion greens, feel free to cut those up. You can add them on top, or you can throw them in right now. This is a fine time to do that. So I'm going to dish up myself a little bowl with my rice, and I'll show it to you, and I'll check in with you guys and see how yours turned out. Okay, more little snicks. All right, even though my burner, I think, was a little slow, I think it finally got the job done. I'm gonna turn that off. Sprinkle some of my veggies on here. Stuff dropped. Here. Okay. All right.